It's a fine October morning on the mighty Shire River in southeastern Malawi, a small country in southeastern Africa. Malawi is just a bit larger than Bulgaria and encompasses nearly all of Lake Malawi, Africa's third largest lake. With its population of about 17 million people, it's one of the more densely populated countries in Africa today, and one of the poorest. But driving southward from the lake, the smooth new roads are lined with small fields and fallow land, interspersed with little markets and villages. Over 80% of Malawians live and work in such agricultural villages today. Lake Malawi and the country south of the lake lie at the bottom of an East African rift valley, which largely defines the geography of the country. Our first destination is Liwonde National Park that hugs the Shire River and its lakes. We entered Malawi at Chipande on the border with Mozambique and crossed the Shire River at Mangochi, then headed south toward Liwonde, the small town near the entrance to the park. We stayed at a camp just outside the park. It was the peak of the dry season, so the river was flowing neatly within its banks. During the rainy season, the waters come nearly up to this viewing platform. We took an afternoon safari on the river, which even in the dry season is swift and broad. Motoring along the river affords stunning views of the landscape and animals, particularly hippos, Nile crocodiles, birds, and elephants. The Shire River is a major watercourse and the only one that drains out of Lake Malawi. It carries the waters southward and dumps them into the Zambezi River, one of Africa's primary riverine arteries. In two places along its 250-mile course, the river grows so wide that it forms its own sizable lakes. Many people fish the river for their livelihood, but with Malawi's rapidly growing population, this is resulting in overfishing. As we returned to camp, we passed near a herd of elephants approaching the nearby villages. Malawi's growing human settlements are coming into increasing conflict with wildlife, so a local bush pilot uses his airplane to shoo the giants back toward the river. Early in the morning, we drove through Liwonde National Park. During the dry season, the semi-deciduous forest is largely denuded, making animal sightings easier. Animals also congregate in tighter densities during the dry season as they want to stay near to the shrinking sources of water. There are no big cats left in this park to prey upon them. During the wet season, most of these flat, empty meadows are marshes, inundated with water that prevents the growth of thick forests. Elephants also destroy large swathes of trees as they graze. Thus, the landscape is constantly being remade and the river's course constantly shifting. The bush pilot, who works with conservationists, described some of their challenges. These include curbing overfishing and mitigating conflicts between humans and large animals. They're trying out new technologies to monitor and prevent poaching, like inserting cameras into the horns of rhinos. Funding is tight, however, so at times, conservation workers even volunteer their time and resources. In the morning, we headed back the way we came, this time continuing further northward to visit Lake Malawi. From Liwonde, it was about a 3-hour taxi drive to reach the southern lake shore at Cape Maclear. Cape Maclear isn't really a town, but just a small lakefront development catering to foreign tourists. Lake Malawi is famous for its clear water and the 1,000 species of colorful cichlids that live here, most of which are endemic to this lake. Thumbi Island, the main little island facing the beach off Cape Maclear, is the perfect place to go snorkeling. The water is brilliantly clear, and the cichlids all cluster and swim around you as you float about, as though you're one of them. But if you stop and hold still for a few seconds, they try to nibble at your legs, trying to scrape food as they do from the rocks. The nibbling doesn't hurt, it's like a hard, scratchy tickle. Our guides throw fish and call out to the resident fish eagles so we can watch them dive. There are several nesting pairs that live around Cape Maclear. Each one is known and named by the locals. Around the Cape, there are several beautiful spots hidden away where you can swim in bright, calm waters. The beach along Cape Maclear is long and open, lined with perhaps a couple dozen small hotels, ranging from fairly basic to fairly nice. Walking through Cape Maclear and out toward the east, you'll find yourself in Chambe, the village that existed here before the tourist town came up. A local guide took us through and showed us around, beginning with one of the 2 local mills for grinding the maize that they grow in small family holdings. The people of Chambe are speakers of Chichewa, a majority language and ethnic group of Malawi. There are some dozen different languages spoken in Malawi, but most Malawians also speak some Chichewa. They're predominantly Christian with a Muslim minority who freely intermarry. Chambe is a large village of about 20,000 people, growing very rapidly in the past couple of decades. Its local market offers a surprisingly full array of goods. Most men here fish the lake for a living. The fish are dried and sold into larger towns. A few people have found employment in the adjacent tourist enclave of Cape Maclear, but the lake is now overfished. Cape Maclear remains very small and limited, and the rate of population growth is outpacing local options to make a good living. This local hangout serves imported spirits and offers billiards and a stage for local bands to play. One of 2 schools in Chambe, this private school is considered better than the government school, but it's too expensive for most families here. This yard is one of the village's 2 other drinking establishments, where the only thing on tap is the local moonshine made from maize. The owner happily shows us her process. Traditionally, the Chewa are matrilineal horticulturalists. In their tradition, immovable property, like their cornfields, flour mills, or distilleries, is owned by women. But due to their practice of lobola, or bride price, the children of a Chewa family belong to their father. Next we head to Lilongwe, the capital of Malawi. As our taxi climbed out of the Rift Valley, the landscape became greener, more rugged, and more populous. With about 1 million residents, Lilongwe is the biggest city in Malawi. As in several other African countries, much of its newly developing infrastructure, looking almost like islands of suburban California in Africa, is the boon of massive recent Chinese investment. Even the shiny new parliament building was built by the Chinese, who arrived in 2007 offering $6 billion in aid. In exchange, Malawi broke off its 4 decades-long diplomatic alliance with Taiwan literally overnight. In addition, Malawi has granted China lucrative mining, timber, and trade concessions. But ordinary taxpayers footed the bill for this grand new memorial to Dr. Hastings Banda, Malawi's first president who led the country to independence from Britain in 1964. Though the West remembers Dr. Banda as an eccentric and violent dictator during his reign in the 1960s through 90s, his image in Malawi is currently being renewed to recall more of his contributions to public education and the high ideals he preached for civic behavior. Dr. Banda was certainly a complex, enigmatic, and tyrannical ruler, but this earnest nostalgia for the father of the nation may be due to the fact that his reign is also remembered as a time of greater agricultural prosperity, increasing life expectancies, and a stronger civic order. Malawi's democracy now moves forward, grappling with the AIDS epidemic as well as the challenges of depending upon an agriculture-based economy in today's modern globalized world. And the poverty of the rural areas is easy to lose sight of in the more elite enclaves of Lilongwe, where capitalist modernity thrives, supported by plentiful goods from South Africa and across the globe. One unique feature of Lilongwe is its wildlife center, a patch of wilderness at the city center which serves as a refuge for wild animals rescued from various parts of the world. It's also a sizable parkland where walking trails lead you further out at your own risk through forest still inhabited by roaming hyenas, crocodiles, and antelope. Interestingly, our guide made a conservationist's pitch to the local tourists, middle-class urban Malawians, urging them never to eat bushmeat. We were surprised that they seemed affronted by his suggestion and argued with him. Life for the moneyed classes seems perfectly pleasant in Lilongwe, where traffic, crowds, noise, and pollution don't yet amount to any daily frustration or stress as they do in so many other capital cities. Jazz, pizza, and people watching were a perfect way to spend a beautiful Sunday afternoon. Though short on time, we wanted to make one quick foray into the northern part of Malawi, so we headed for Nkata Bay on the northwestern shore of Lake Malawi, an 8-hour bus journey on good roads. Except for the overstuffing of buses, travel to these primary destinations in Malawi is relatively easy and comfortable. Nkata Bay is a prime destination for local tourists. The day we arrived, the last revelers were enjoying the close of a long weekend. With music playing on the beach and small family groups relaxing on the sand, children playing in the water, it felt at once both livelier and homier than Cape Maclear. Malawians who've been at school speak at least some English, an official language from the days when Malawi was a British-administered territory called Nyasaland. The British first began to take control of this region beginning in the late 1800s, when Cecil Rhodes led the land grab through southern Africa, pushing native peoples off their lands to make way for British farmers and miners. But few British colonists ever came to settle in this region, and although neighboring Rhodesia at one time administered Nyasaland under their white government structured around racism, the small numbers of local colonists made that difficult to sustain. In the end, Malawi achieved full independence in the early 1960s, avoiding any major war. And after independence, after instating moderate land reforms and redistribution, President Banda encouraged white farmers and Indian business owners to stay and to feel welcome, as many of them have done. The different ethnic groups of Malawi coexist without incident today, and at least the indigenous peoples, Christians and Muslims, Chewa, Yao, and 7 other ethno-linguistic groups mingle and intermarry freely. Malawi gets called the warm heart of Africa. Maybe that's because of its peaceful vibe, or maybe it's the serene beauty of the landscape. Either way, the nickname does feel apt. My only regret about our visit to Malawi was that we didn't have the time to see more of it.
Motumbwa mwananga umbege abulanda taene kugula kwa iwe oyamba njoya ine ndakuvutikilane ninkalinda mwananga tileloli izili umange woyelawe